Craig Jones has never been one to take things too seriously, especially compared to most of the rest of the guys in the sport at the time that he started, who were extremely intense, affliction, or tap-out wearing tough guys. Craig just liked to have a good time and never felt the need to develop an intimidating exterior to gain an edge in competition. He embodied the token Australian banter like so many others, as a fun-loving Aussie who likes to travel and party, and who also happens to be an extremely talented grappler in a time where the world really hadn't seen many others. In 2017 at the ADCC World Championships, Jones was just about the biggest underdog of the whole tournament.
Who the fuck is that guy?
He had earned his spot at the previous ADCC in 2015 as a purple belt, but he got completely outclassed and submitted in the first round. But in 2017, he had proven he could win the Asian Oceanian trials, which are widely known as the weakest trials where competitors don't generally go on to fare that well at the championship show. And seeing as Craig did so poorly in 2015, nobody took him that seriously, especially not his first round opponent and one of the favorites to win the whole event, Leandro Lo, who was a multiple-time world champion and the winner that year of the most difficult trials event, the West Coast Trials, where Lo defeated Gordon Ryan in a barn burner of a final match. Craig had Leandro Lo in deep trouble immediately in their match, reefing on an ankle lock and even catching him in an extremely deep heel hook that really compromised Lo's knee. For the next few minutes, Lo was in full defense mode, defending Craig's attacks and just trying to survive, eventually slipping up and leaving the opportunity for Craig to scramble to his feet, taking Lo's back and finishing him with a rear naked choke.
It was as surprised as everyone else watching around the world.
And right after the biggest win of his career, in the very next match, he would go on to submit another high-profile legend in Murillo Santana, with a highlight reel flying triangle in just 1 minute. Yeah, Craig Jones was on a heater. He would end up being eliminated in the quarterfinal match against Keenan Cornelius and narrowly missed the podium, but he was flying high after taking out two legends that he was pretty much content to hang his hat on this feat. So naturally, he started to celebrate, watching the rest of the event and getting into some beers. But unbeknownst to him, they actually still needed fighters for the open weight class, and he had been voluntold to join. They'd be throwing him in there against ex-UFC star Chael Sonnen, who just happened to be 2 weight classes heavier. With booze on his breath and nothing to lose, Craig stepped in and subbed another big name with a heel hook, all while playing with the house's money at this point. But what happened next would set him on a path that would change the trajectory of his career completely. Gordon Ryan, the greatest grappler maybe to ever live, was something different in 2017. Up to this point in his career, he wasn't the Gordon that he was in 2021 or even 2024. He was winning, beating big names in ways that looked easy, and he had a confidence, even an arrogance that made him must watch at this ADCC event. And he showed up on a different level, submitting everybody. Even though he competed at 88 kilograms, he was unstoppable in the absolute division, where he ran into the surprisingly new hot grappler out of Australia, Craig Jones. And the two of them had a highly technical match where it was clear that these were two of the most proficient leg lockers of the times. Both were able to exploit the lack of leg locking knowledge that was defining the era amongst the rest of the competitors, but against each other, it was an even playing field. Gordon used his signature headquarters passing to float through Craig's guard, and Craig forced him to reset with an off balance. But Gordon jumped right back in, forcing him to carry his weight and exhausting his strength, easily floating through the Aussie's guard. It seemed like it was over, but then Craig managed to catch Gordon in a deep no-gi Ezekiel while his hands were tied up. For a second, it looked like this could be the moment that the most unserious grappler from down under could take out the king with the most unserious submission you could think of. But Gordon was stubborn and desperate to win, masterfully using his ability to create angles and escape the danger while moving into mount. From here, Gordon secures the head and arm choke to prove that he's the new top dog that can hang with the leg lockers, while also showing off his complete rounded game. And little did we all know that this would be the first meeting of two of the most influential personalities in the sport of modern jiu-jitsu, who still feud constantly to this day. That year also marked a massive physical transformation for Craig Jones, who was noticeably bigger and more muscular than he had been just 2 years prior. Craig had still been competing at under 88 kilograms in 2017, but looked much fitter and stronger, almost as if he was dieting and cutting weight, as opposed to looking soft and maybe even undersized for the division like he was in 2015. Now at the time, nobody would have been saying that Craig looked super jacked and sounding the alarms of steroid use. But in retrospect, for a 26-year-old to look that much better in just just 2 years, it was pretty obviously unnatural unless he had just never touched a weight before. But we now know this was about the time that Craig had started using PEDs to take his game to another level. Say what you will about drug use in professional sports. It's immoral, unsafe, especially in combat sports, even that it should be illegal. The truth is, at least for ADCC, it's just accepted by the organizers that athletes can do what they want and not face any consequences. So it's likely that a 24-year-old Craig Jones was thinking to himself, I'm technical and skilled enough to beat anyone at a trials event to make it to the championship show. But if I'm gonna want to beat athletes like Hamilo Bahal, who's just as skilled but way bigger and stronger, I need to get more physically imposing and fast. Craig's success at ADCC in 2017 did not go unnoticed, and he became a hot commodity, receiving notice from every event under the UFC umbrella, like Submission Underground, Quintet, Polaris, and EBI. And he made the most of these opportunities, going almost unbeaten for the next 2 years, where he exposed black belt after black belt for not being able to defend his elite heel hook attacks. He was on such a tear, keeping knee surgeons in business, that the next 5 matches after losing to Gordon were all quick heel hook wins, 4 of which came in under a minute at the EBI Absolute in 2017. But in the finals, he was once again going to face his rival, Gordon Ryan, and this match would go down as one of the best of all time. Both guys dominated their way to the finals, but this match would be a long back and forth stalemate of a battle going all the way to over. Gordon wasn't losing this. He proved he'd do anything to win, and he did just that. If Craig could have won this match, maybe everything would have been different today. The unbeatable king wouldn't be so unbeatable, and it could have altered what happened next. In the corner of the king that night was John Danaher, the most successful and widely regarded as most knowledgeable coach in the sport. They liked what they saw from Craig and got along with him backstage, so they invited him to come try a class and train with them, which eventually turned into more than just a visit to the Blue Basement. Craig would move to New York and become part of the team full-time as the Danaher Death Squad would emerge. They were the ultimate team, showing up and clearing out every tournament from here on out. But you know how the story goes by now. Things that are too good to be true don't last forever, and the team ended up breaking up. It was messy, but out of the rubble came B-Team and New Wave, where once again Craig Jones and Gordon Ryan would be rivals as leaders of the two teams. But it would be different this time, as friendly competitiveness between two of the best turned to personal hatred.
Guys, Jake Schultz podcast with Gordon22 is rock solid. Obviously nothing but the truth. We left the gym. B-Team formed because really John was just training us too hard. Not because he was slapping the out of people, not because of the abuse Gordon was doing to people along with his partner.
The new dynamic would be felt across the jiu-jitsu community, not only because it was two great competitors, but because of the overall influence both had on the sport. Gordon was getting better and better and pulled away from being on the same level in the race of winning championships, while Craig just couldn't keep up. But even yet, Craig's impact on grappling was about to grow immensely. At this point, Craig was competing regularly on UFC-hosted events. He had moved up to under 99 kilograms at ADCC, cemented himself as a perennial silver medalist under the B-Team banner, and leaned into the troll persona a lot more. Simultaneously, he continued to develop his relationship with UFC in a new capacity as a coach on The Ultimate Fighter with Team Volkanovski, where things blossomed further with the camp as he ingrained himself as a key component to their success. He began cornering Volk and ever since has helped him to develop real strength with his grappling skills that evolved tremendously in the octagon. Other fighters took notice, and now Craig has quickly become a staple in the UFC, particularly for strikers looking to develop their defensive grappling when taking on wrestle-heavy opponents. And for the most part, he has a great success rate as a coach. And Craig's genius has really shined through as he's released highly technical video instructionals and impressive analytical breakdowns of MMA fights that highlight his knowledge and dedication to studying the sport. For a guy that had made his career early on leg locking less technical fighters, it's easy to forget that Craig really knows his stuff because of all the antics. But make no mistake, at 34 years old, he's one of the most valuable minds in the sport today, with a wealth of knowledge. And by shoehorning himself into the world of MMA, Craig has become a household name in martial arts. But throughout 2024, he was becoming unsatisfied with the tournament landscape in jiu-jitsu. He began realizing his value and felt that the $10,000 prize at ADCC 2024 really wasn't worth the grind that he would have to go through to try and win. He showed no interest when asked numerous times by reporters if he would be competing that year.
I don't know if I'll do ADCC, It's a tough one, eh?
You definitely should.
It's a lot of work, It's a big commitment of time.
Saying that the greedy organizers should spend less money on glitz and glam with fireworks, bigger arenas, and bongo drums so that they could up the prizes, and even joked that he should just run his own tournament on the same weekend as ADCC to try and make some real money for the competitors and spite the cheap figurehead of ADCC, Mo Jassim. And pretty shortly after, kind of out of nowhere, he announced that this idea could actually be a reality. Craig had found found a backer and he could afford to do just what he was initially joking about. Not only that, but he had found enough money to pay every single athlete that comes to his event $10,001, $1 more than the ADCC grand prize just for showing up. And on top of that, the chance to win the biggest prize in the history of jiu-jitsu, a grand prize of $1 million per division, and it would be called the Craig Jones Invitational. At first, nobody really took this seriously. Could the same guy that said this,
With the right mix of autism and steroids, you were guaranteed, 100% guaranteed, to become a world champion.
really be able to run a $3 million tournament the likes the sport has never seen before? And all just because he wants to shove it in ADCC's face? But then the Tackett brothers announced that they were in for CJI. And this was monumental, because these are the same brothers that went through the grueling ADCC trials to punch their tickets to the big show, but they would be foregoing that opportunity to try and win $1 million.
I don't want to say I didn't trust CJI, but I just didn't know. There wasn't enough information on it yet for myself. And then on top of it, ADCC is such a big deal to me that missing out on ADCC, it has to be like, you know, a big thing for me. You know, it has to be really important, and it is.
With the Tacketts on board, this opened the floodgates. High-profile athlete after another committed to CJI. Even the previous ADCC champion, Cade Ruotolo, would be giving up the chance at defending his title. And before we knew it, the divisions were stacked, and Craig had gotten himself involved with his long-anticipated freak show of a match with Gabby Garcia to put a bow on the whole thing. But they weren't just happy to capture the attention of the world away from ADCC. Craig had good intentions with the event. He would show it free on YouTube, backing the Fair Fight Foundation with the goal of raising money to support their mission of building jiu-jitsu gyms in underdeveloped countries around the world, having a women's super fight to help grow the opportunities for women in jiu-jitsu, and of course paying fighters more than they've ever been taken care of before. So by some miracle, CJI actually happened, and it went off exceptionally well. With the custom round-based rule set, hungry competitors, and the pit arena borrowed from karate combat to prevent stalling, they set the stage for some real highlights. And sure enough, it was very entertaining, to the point, easy to follow, and we even witnessed one of the highest paced, most exciting matches in recent memory. Best of all, everyone got paid, none more than Nicky Rod and Cade Ruotolo. And as he was wrapping up, Craig took the stage to announce that he would do it all over again in 2025.
Let's do it, guys. CJI 2025.
So we're now just days away from CJI 2, and the hype seems just as real as it was the first time. A lot has changed in the format with the 18 bracket in a quintet Royal Rumble style, but the drama is still there with all of the team rivalry dynamics at play. This will no doubt be another great spectacle, and it's amazing to see people in jiu-jitsu have a chance to win big money for a second year in a row. Craig has good intentions in mind when he stands up to the big corporations like Flow Grappling, the UFC, and One Championship. He's trying to put the fighters first in a world plagued by predatory exclusivity contracts.
Some of the least trustworthy people in all of business would be fight sports promoters. So please, if you don't have a manager, read the contract yourself or find someone more intelligent than you to read the contract to make sure they're not sneaking in any stipulations that you have not previously verbally agreed.
But I can't help but consider the possible negative side effects that could come with this event. For starters, CJI is completely based on an invite system. Although there were trial events this year for some of the teams, the truth is that these were all small private events with pre-invited athletes. There's no opportunity for somebody unknown to show up, beat everyone, and earn their spot in an open to the public style trials event like there is for ADCC. So there's really no element of injecting new talent into the sport. If CJI continues, Craig will probably keep trying to achieve the next level to one up the previous event in order to maintain the public interest and keep the funding coming in. And this takes away from the general idea we have of a structured sporting event. If there's no consistency in the rules, can a sport really be taken seriously? Who knows how many spots there will be in the next event if the quintet bracket ends up being boring or takes too long and it doesn't work out. They may go back to the previous version of the rules, which offer less slots for competitors and therefore less jobs. Without any structure and the goal of capturing attention, the event could eventually just turn into a super fight show where the rules and competitors get progressively more outlandish in order to draw attention. Think influencer boxing as opposed to a serious event that strengthens the legitimacy of the sport. If that model becomes the successful route for CJI in this hypothetical TikTok brain-rotted society, it could push out the legitimate events that we have in the sport today, like ADCC, IBJJF, and even UFO to building their jiu-jitsu skills. Already we've seen a number of competitors holding back from CJI 2, some due to injury, but also some due to contract clauses or monetary decisions decisions to fight elsewhere. Take the Tackett brothers, who were the very first athletes signed up for CJI 1. They chose not to compete this year. The quintet format just didn't suit them given they aren't part of a highly competitive gym with an athlete at each weight class, and they feel that in the long term they're better suited to stay available for the UFC, where the opportunity to earn money long term as opposed to committing all out for a smaller chance to win money at CJI is not guaranteed. Unfortunately, losing out on the brothers is a huge hit to the talent pool for the event this year, and they aren't the only big names holding out. In another hypothetical vein, it's not crazy to assume that this could be the end of the road for CJI. Craig has already announced that he'll be leaving B Team in Austin and taking a step back from jiu-jitsu. In classic Craig fashion, it's a bit unclear whether this means jiu-jitsu competition or if it also means he's done with coaching in MMA and even done with promoting CJI so that he can vanish into a nose beer filled retirement. A jiu-jitsu world without Craig Jones is a really boring one, and one that I really hope we don't see. Whether you love him or hate him, you can't deny that Craig Jones has had a massive impact on the grappling zeitgeist. And despite a few small negative side effects, CJI is an incredible event that even the most casual jiu-jitsu fan will want to watch. And if this is the end of his career, I think that might be the thing Craig Jones will be remembered for doing best. From wily underdog finishes to gutsy championship battles, trend-setting with techniques or trend-setting looks, the highest level MMA grappling knowledge, and the lowest level jokes, Craig Jones's mark on jiu-jitsu will live on forever. And for his last trick, Craig will have to pull a rabbit out of his hat as his original opponent for CJI 2, Gable Steveson, has had to pull out of the competition with a toe injury that Craig seems pretty suspicious about, especially since he's supposed to make his MMA debut in a few weeks. Right now there's no announcement for the replacement, but there is speculation on a few names. Chael Sonnen called out Craig, but this would honestly be a bit underwhelming because Craig's obviously already beaten him and he's 48 years old. On the other hand, Andre Galvao could be an option that gets me a bit more amped, and he had some interest in the first CJI throwing his name in as an emergency substitute. But I could also see Wyatt Hendrickson, the only man to beat Gable Steveson, as a good option. He's got a ton of momentum right now as an active college wrestling champion, and it would scratch that itch that Craig has to beat up on wrestlers.
You thought jiu-jitsu was gay. What did wrestling just show us?
One thing's for sure, it probably won't be an active UFC athlete because Craig has pretty much burned all bridges with the UFC management, and they won't be contractually allowed.
I know you guys tune in to watch my ideas come to fruition on the UFC YouTube channel.
But all I know is that I can't wait to see how this final performance from Craig Jones goes down.